Okay, this is my project for Mrs. Repsher's class, and it is on the 13 colonies. So yeah, let's get started. The 13 colonies were the British colonies on the Atlantic coast of North America, founded between 1607, Virginia, and 1733. Now, Georgia. Now, this took place after the Revolutionary War, which is a big conflict in this place. So they wanted to declare independence. Yay! Who doesn't like independence? And these are what the 13 colonies are. They are Delaware, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Georgia, Connecticut, Massachusetts, Maryland, South Carolina, New Hampshire, Virginia, New York, North Carolina, and Rhode Island. Forgive me if I said Virginia twice. I don't really know. Now, the 13 colonies, what they basically were is that all the 13 colonies are controlled by one British Empire. One. Remember that now. Now, the British Empire, they wanted to control just like their own land. Like, they couldn't control the whole United States, so they made peace, blah, blah, blah. They wanted to have their own stuff. They had their own rules there, and every single place that was controlled by the British in the 13 colonies, the rules are the same. Same rules. It doesn't matter if you're in a different state or nothing. Same rules. Now, in 1734, colonies wanted more rights. All the colonies, the citizens of the colonies. Now, they wanted more rights, and mostly it was because of trading, what you can and cannot trade, and yeah, it was like a bunch of rules that they wanted to change. Because back then they were really strict, you can imagine. Now, we're going to be moving on to the next subject, or fact, about the 13 colonies. Slavery! I shiver at that name. But at this time, slavery was legal. Now, the usual jobs for the maids, usual jobs for the slaves, like the most common jobs for the women was maids, and for the men was mostly agriculture and farming. Now, there are butlers that they used back then. Maybe seen Daniel Lee's The Butler, the movie, really good movie. I highly recommend it. There were butlers back then, but they were more expensive. They were more expensive, and probably because back then, I read an article about this, like, back then they thought men could do more than women. Well, that was back then, girls, so please do not get offended. Now, and yes, they had farming. Now, farming, this was, like, because when they captured the slaves and they took them to there, they already had so much knowledge in agriculture, they could just tell them to do something and they would do it. They didn't have to teach them anything or none of that. 287,000 slaves were imported into the 13 colonies. And, well, yes, over 287,000 slaves. That's a lot of slaves. Now, 2% of those 300,000 basically slaves were brought from South America. Now, we'd hardly explored any lands at that time. We were just beginning to see New World. So basically 2% of that is not a lot, but basically 2%. Very interesting fact. Time for our next fact/subject, the British Empire in trading. Now, the British Empire at that time operating under the I think my tongue is broken. The mercantile system, where trade was concentrated inside the empire. That means the empire was always watching you. Always watching you. Now, so they were watching every single thing you were trading. They had, like, I don't know, spies, something. I don't know, something. But somehow they always knew what you were trading and if somebody was doing something very bad. Now, And this is the rule that really set people off. Tick, tick, tick. You are not allowed to trade with you're not allowed to trade with other empires. Now, before you say anything, before you say why would that make them mad? Well, let me explain. What's the first word you think of when you hear empire? You think power. You think wealth. You think ruling. Correct. Empires are very wealthy. Had a bunch of good stuff to trade. Now, say the empire has something you wanted to trade, and you had something they wanted, and they would trade that, and you would become rich. Uh-oh, you forgot. Can't trade with other empires. Wham, wham. Yeah, that was the thing that really set people off. They always kept on going to the judges, trial after trial. Some people even died for it. They always said the same thing they said, "May we please, sire, be able to trade with other empires." And the same answer that the government replied was no. The N-O word, the word that we all hate. Now beginning with intense protests over the Stamp Act of 1765, the Americans insisted on the principle, no taxation without representation. Yeah, let's not get into the tax stuff. But all that basically means is that you could not tax, the Americans wanted the government, because they had taxes back then, and it's still going on today. It's so funny. People just forget it. But back then, basically what no taxation without representation means is that they can't tax the people without telling them what they're taxing them for and what they're taxing them. Like how much money they're taxing them and why they're taxing them. If they didn't used to do that then. They just say, pay us $200 right now. And they wouldn't even know why they were paying it. So, but fortunately, the Stamp Act, we did a passage on that, didn't really work out. The no taxation representation did not carry out. I think today it actually is, because they always tell you light bill, sound bill, water bill, wind bill. I don't think there's a bill for that. And for our probably last subject, the population of it. By 1676, about 85% of the white population was of English, Irish, Scottish, and Welsh descent, with 9% of German origin and 4% of Dutch, grew rapidly at a rate through the 18th century, primarily because of high birth rates and relatively low death rates. I mean, more people were being born, more babies were being born and less people were dying. So, and this is an interesting fact, over 90% of the immigrants that came to have a new life, population, some of the immigrants did not get from slaves, were farmers. Think about that for a second. 90%. That means almost every single person of the population of 13 colonies knew how to farm, grow corn, bell peppers, cabbage, anything. 90%. I mean, what if 90% of the population in Texas or the United States, they were super villains. They had superpowers. They could fly. Imagine that. It'd just be so weird. I mean, maybe one of them, well, not to offend anybody, one of those dumb people who didn't really know how to farm at all and you did not know a single thing. Then you have to go to your neighbor every time you wanted just to plant some corn. People learned. Well, basically over 90% of them were farmers. Really interesting. Now, we're back to some interesting facts. Now, like I said at the very, very beginning, which I cannot find, and they wanted more rights. Now, this was what really was weird. They started killing people because they kept on asking for more rights. That's how mad they started getting with the taxation thing. Some people were dying of food because they didn't have enough money to buy them because they were taxing them too much money. That was weird. And the big protest when they were with the Stamp Act, they were protesting. They went in like, this is going to work so well. Everything's going, we're going to have happy new lives. And they came out like, what just happened? My life's ruined. So that's why they got really mad and they did that thing. That's a really interesting fact. But that pretty much closes it up. That is my report on 15 colonies, all the interesting facts and what they were, what they are, etc. Hope you like it. Goodbye. Peace out. Bless you.